It's 10:47 p.m., New Year's Eve, in Northridge, California. A woman pulls into the parking lot of the Village Point apartment complex. She's coming back from a food run. The restaurant was closed. She's been gone maybe 15 minutes. She tries to call her boyfriend. No answer. She tries again. Nothing. She parks, steps out, and that's when she sees the flashing lights. Police cars, an ambulance, yellow tape, and on the ground, the man she loves. The man who moved across Los Angeles just to be with her. The father of 2 daughters. The guy everyone at Home Depot called the most popular person in the store. Keith Porter is dead, shot by his own neighbor. But here's the thing, that neighbor, he wasn't just some guy with a gun and a grudge. He was a federal agent, an officer with Immigration and Customs Enforcement. And within 48 hours, the Department of Homeland Security released a statement calling this agent a hero. They said he bravely responded to an active shooter situation. Active shooter? Those 2 words would change everything, because Keith Porter's family says that's a lie. They say there was no active shooter that night. They say Keith was doing something his grandfather did, something his neighbors did, every single New Year's Eve, for as long as anyone could remember, firing shots into the air to celebrate. So what really happened in those final minutes of Keith Porter's life? Why did this ICE agent leave the safety of his apartment to confront an armed man instead of just calling 911? Why has his story changed so many times? First he shot Keith to disarm him, then there was an exchange of fire, then he went back inside to put on tactical gear before coming back out. Why hasn't this ICE agent been arrested? Why hasn't he been charged? And why, when there were multiple people firing guns in that apartment complex that night, why was Keith Porter the only one who ended up dead? Keith's mother says he was on his way back. A new apartment, new job, new life. He never got to ring in the new year, never got to say goodbye. His 9-year-old daughter will grow up without a father. His 20-year-old daughter posted a TikTok that went viral, 7 million views, begging people to say his name. This is the story about a 43-year-old man trying to start over, about a federal agent who made a choice, about a government that decided who the hero was before any investigation was complete. Sounds familiar, right? It's also a story about a family that refuses to let the world forget. Hello, strangers. Welcome back to the Strange Bar and Grill. I'm your host, JP. Today I'll be talking about the killing of Keith Porter. If you're new here, make sure to watch until the end. Leave a like, subscribe, and leave me a comment, because I do like to respond back to you guys. But I won't hold you any longer. Let's jump right in. To understand how Keith Porter ended up dead on a sidewalk in Northridge, California, we need to start about 11 months earlier. Keith grew up in Compton. His father was heavily involved with gangs, but his mother, Franciola Armstrong, worked every single day to steer her son toward a different path, and by all accounts, she succeeded. Keith graduated from Verbum Dei High School, an all-boys Catholic school in Watts. He played football and basketball. He made friends easily. His best friend, Adrian Matoyer, met him there, and they stayed close for 30 years. He was a performer, Adrian remembered. He would always go out of his way to make people laugh. Keith worked all kinds of jobs over the years. Waiter, tow truck driver. He even worked as an aide helping students with special needs. Most recently, he landed a job at the Home Depot in Northridge, where co-workers described him as one of the most popular people in the store. But the biggest change came in early 2025. Keith fell in love with a woman who lived in Northridge, a quiet, middle-class neighborhood in the San Fernando Valley. About 11 months before that New Year's Eve, he packed up his life in Compton and moved to be closer to her. His family said he moved for love. He settled into the Village Point apartment complex. New apartment, new job, new relationship. He focused on building a better life for himself and his 2 daughters, one 9 years old and the other 20. December 31st, 2025, Keith and his girlfriend had planned a quiet celebration at their apartment. Just a few friends, some champagne, ring in the new year. Sometime that evening, Keith's girlfriend left to pick up food from a nearby restaurant. And while she was gone, Keith stepped outside. Now here's something you need to understand. In certain communities, there's a tradition of firing guns into the air at midnight on New Year's Eve. It's been happening for generations. Keith's cousin, Janae Tyler, said their grandfather did it, their neighbors did it. It's dangerous. Absolutely. and it's illegal, but it's something Keith had grown up around his entire life. And I've seen that happen in, you want to say like in the suburbs, in bougie ass neighborhoods, whatever you want to call it, high income, whatever. People will shoot their guns on New Year's. I've seen it happen everywhere. That's nothing new. Keith had recently gotten his California firearm safety certificate. His best friend Adrian said Keith was super anxious and excited about legally owning a firearm. He saw it as a badge of pride, proof that he was doing things the right way. Around 10:30 p.m., I know that seems early, but we did the same thing this year as well. We celebrated that East Coast New Year's, and by 10:30, me and my wife were in bed watching Martin reruns. But anyway, let me go back. At around 10:30 p.m., Keith stepped outside the Village Point apartments with his newly acquired AR-15 style rifle. He pointed it towards the sky and he fired. But Keith Porter wasn't the only one in that apartment complex with the gun. Living in the same building was an off-duty officer from Immigration and Customs Enforcement, an ICE agent. And when he heard the gunshots, he made a decision that would change everything. Now, here's where things get murky because everything we know about the ICE agent comes from his own account, and that account has changed multiple times. And when stories keep changing, in my opinion, someone is lying. But you tell me. According to the Department of Homeland Security, the agent heard the gunfire and noticed it was getting progressively louder. He believed the shooter was approaching his apartment, so he grabbed his ICE-authorized firearm and went downstairs to investigate. Now, the official, and I'm doing that in air quotes, the official story says the agent identified himself as law enforcement and ordered Keith Porter to put down his weapon. When Porter allegedly pointed his rifle at the officer and fired at least 3 rounds, the agent was forced to defensively use his weapon. I don't believe that though. These guys don't identify themselves. Hell, I've seen these guys crack their car window and do a drive-by with mace, just driving by spraying mace out the window. I mean, we're talking about guys that can't even get a job doing mall security, but now they're an ICE agent and you give them a pistol? But by the end of the encounter, Keith Porter was shot dead. Now that's the government's version, and we already know about what time they're on. But witnesses tell a very different story. Neighbors told the family's attorney they did not hear the agent identify himself as law enforcement. 2 neighbors reported hearing 3 shots, then a pause lasting about 1 minute, then another 3 shots. Now that's not an immediate exchange of gunfire. That's something else entirely. That sounds like Keith shot in the air, and then this ICE agent came outside and shot him 3 times, like they did to Renee Good. 3 shots, that must be in their training manual. When you're murdering citizens, make sure to shoot 3 times. And then there's what Keith's cousin, Janae Tyler, says the agent told the family. At first, Janae says, the agent admitted he heard the gunshots. He wanted to be a superhero. He went outside, confronting Keith, and then he shot him to disarm him. In this version, there was no exchange of fire. The agent simply shot Keith to disarm him. But then the story changes. Later, according to both Janae Tyler and BLM Los Angeles' co-founder Melina Abdullah, the agent claimed he first confronted Porter, then went back to his apartment, put on tactical gear, came back outside, and exchanged fire, which that sounds like some BS, and you know it does. So think about that for a second. He confronted an armed man, walked away, put on tactical gear, came back, and then shot him? The family's attorney, Jamal Tucson, has been asking the same question over and over. He claims he heard gunshots were getting closer to his apartment, but rather than staying at a position of safety, he left his apartment and went downstairs to what would put him in a position of danger. Why didn't he just stay inside? Call 911. The people who are actually trained for this. Had he just stayed in his apartment for 5 minutes, Tucson said, Keith would be with us. Within days of Keith Porter's death, the Department of Homeland Security released a statement. And in that statement, they called Keith Porter something that made his family's blood boil. And it makes me mad too. They called him an active shooter. DHS Assistant Secretary Tricia McLaughlin praised the ICE agent, saying he bravely responded to an active shooter situation. But let's be real clear about what that term means. An active shooter is someone actively engaged in killing or attempting to kill people in a populated area. Think mass shootings, right? Think schools and nightclubs. Keith Porter was firing into the air. Was that dangerous? Yes, of course it was. Was it illegal? Absolutely. But was he trying to kill someone? Multiple witnesses say no. He was celebrating the new year the same way his family had celebrated for decades. Civil rights activist Najee Ali put it plainly, "We believe that Keith Porter Jr. was unjustly shot and killed by an overzealous off-duty ICE agent. I feel like the majority of them are a little overzealous." I feel like the ICE recruitment videos are like those Everest college videos. That guy comes on, "What are you doing with your life? Just sitting on the couch calling 1-800-STROKEY-DOKE all day? You ain't got no life skills. You don't know how to do Excel. Join ICE." And I feel like the majority of those ICE agents are those dudes sitting on the couch all day and ain't doing nothing. But let me get back to the story. In a public statement, the Department of Homeland Security claimed that Porter Jr. was an active shooter. The claim is false and misleading. The family's attorney drove the point home. What should have been an arrest and possible citation has turned into a death sentence. And there's something else worth noting. Multiple people at that apartment complex were firing guns that night, but only one person was confronted. Only one person is dead. So what happened since Keith Porter was killed? The investigation is being handled by multiple agencies: LAPD's Robbery Homicide Division, the LA County District Attorney's Office, ICE's Internal Office of Professional Responsibility, and because a federal agent was involved, the FBI and Department of Justice. But here's what hasn't happened. The ICE agent has not been publicly identified. He has not been charged with anything. The night of the shooting, he wasn't even required to surrender his weapon. No sobriety test, no mental health examination, nothing. And here's something that should concern everyone. As of mid-January, the Los Angeles Times reported that LAPD still hadn't interviewed the ICE agent. Why? Because of protocol on how deadly force investigations are conducted when they involve federal law enforcement officers. In other words, there are different rules when a federal agent kills someone. The family held 2 vigils. The first was January 5th, right outside the Village Point Apartments where Keith died. Nearly 100 people showed up. Keith's co-workers from Home Depot arrived first to help set up. His cousin, Janae Tyler, wore a burgundy hoodie with white text that read, "I hope I don't get killed for being black today. Me too, Janae. Me too." She addressed the crowd and said, "If I could say anything to the ICE agent, it's that you're a murderer. You stole my cousin from me. You stole their father from them. You stole a black man off the planet that God ordained to live and thrive. You stole a human life, and you need to pay for it." Melina Abdullah posed a question that's been echoing across Los Angeles. If we can imagine someone else stepping outside of their apartment and being shot by someone who was not an ICE agent, what would happen to that person? We would expect that there would be an arrest. Now I want to pause here for a moment because Keith Porter's death didn't happen in a vacuum. Just 8 days after Keith was killed, another ICE shooting made national headlines. On January 7th, 2026, ICE agent Jonathan Ross shot and killed a 37-year-old woman named Renee Nicole Good in Minneapolis during a massive immigration operation. Renee was a mother of 3 and an award-winning poet. She was a U.S. citizen who had been watching ICE activities in her neighborhood. Federal officials claimed Renee was a domestic terrorist who was weaponizing her SUV. Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Frey watched the video and said, I'm quoting him directly here, "I want to tell everybody directly, that is bullshit." He then told ICE to get the F out of Minneapolis. Now Renee Good's story has been everywhere. It sparked protests across the country. Multiple federal prosecutors have resigned over concerns about how the investigation is being handled. So I'm not going to go too deep into her case because it's all over the news and honestly, it's getting the coverage that it deserves. But what I want you to understand is this. Civil rights advocates are connecting these 2 deaths. At Keith Porter's second vigil, Najee Ali said, "The shootings of Renee Good on Wednesday and Keith Porter Jr. on New Year's Eve are not isolated incidents. They reflect a dangerous pattern of excessive force, poor judgment, and a lack of accountability that is costing innocent people their lives." According to Axios, there have been 7 ICE officer-involved shootings, 2 of them fatal, since the deportation surge began in 2025. Now that's compared to an average of about 1 per year before that. So the shootings are way up. Now before we wrap up, I want to make sure you remember who we're talking about here, because it's easy to get lost in the legal arguments and the politics and the protests, but at the center of it all is a human being, a father, a son, a friend. His nickname was Pooter. His mom gave it to him when he was little, and it stuck for life. His mother, Franciola Armstrong, called him my joy. From the day he was born, she said, when he came around, people looked for him. He was a joy to be around. My son, the biggest heart, sympathetic, appreciative, so much gratitude. His mother spoke at the LA City Council meeting. She could barely get the words out. He didn't deserve this. He was on his way back. He didn't get to say goodbye. I just want to touch my baby one last time, kiss his face, and hold him. I don't have him. His life was snatched from us. Lord, please, I just wish you could get justice for my child. So where does this case stand right now? The ICE agent remains unidentified. He hasn't been arrested. He hasn't been charged. There's no body camera footage because he was off duty. The family is searching for any security camera footage from the apartment complex that might show what really happened. Now here's the legal reality they're facing. Something called the Supremacy Clause in the Constitution gives federal officers immunity from state prosecution when they're acting within the scope of their duties. Even if LA County's district attorney decided to charge this agent, the case would likely get moved to federal court, where agents get a lot more protection. And I'm sure with this administration, they'll just sweep it all under the rug, right? There's a key question here. Was an off-duty agent in civilian clothes confronting someone for celebratory gunfire? Was that really within the scope of his federal immigration duties? I say no. The family says no, and they're not backing down. GoFundMe campaigns for Keith's two daughters have raised over $300,000. The family is demanding answers. They're demanding justice. But alright guys, that's going to be it for today. Let me know what you guys think of this one in the comment section. And if this story moved you at all, share it, talk about it, and keep Keith Porter's name in people's minds. But with that, let's shout out our members. Huff Mommy, K Britt 2509, Michelle Ramsey 752, Shay M 5645, DK the God, Franklin Joan, Laura Notek, By Capricorn, Joanne Johnson 2481, Wilbert Grantham 5779, Miss V Wag 2020, None at All G4L, 901 Retired Ghost Hunter,